into the first steps of securing foreign technology, securing foreign know-how, and securing some resource bases. So this took about, hand in hand, we can see it's a hand-in-hand process of, on the one side, getting more foreign companies into the market. Those foreign companies, they got much more communication and much more cooperation with Chinese companies. At the same time, Chinese companies used that communication, used that know-how to get a little bit into the further overseas markets, to learn, to exchange, to acquire technology, to acquire resources. So after that period of, let's say, 10 years, we see that suddenly things change. So we see here the period from, well, going about 2002, 2003, where suddenly things pick up very fast. This is a period of where China very much had completed an overall improvement of the investment environment, where China had completed a lot of learning processes, where cooperations with foreign companies got into a new era, where Chinese companies had picked up, where Chinese private enterprises picked up. So here we clearly see after a period of about 10 years, foreign investment on the Chinese market moved up very quickly. So this was really from a foreign perspective. The beginning of the 2000s was a period of suddenly everything going up. So China changed a lot. The internal situation changed a lot. Consumer behavior changed a lot. Markets opened up. Foreign enterprises, they found new ways by the changing legal environment to get into the market and get into different markets in China, to expand, to develop their own infrastructure. So they got to know the market, and Chinese consumer behavior and Chinese market just moved up very, very quickly. This again meant that suddenly we had a consumer base of, people in China having gone that far, having attained a lot of own know-how, setting up their own companies, having obtained some liquidity with lots of private enterprises suddenly appearing on the market, with lots of new business models being on the market, which triggered foreign products consumption, while at the same time also enabled the first batch of Chinese enterprises, apart from state-owned enterprises, foreign engagement, to slowly try the first moves in foreign markets. Of course, those first moves, they didn't really be that successful. But yet again, it again went hand in hand with the development of foreign investment coming into the China and having a very, very strong impact on Chinese investment overseas. So as you see before, this is the point where I always try to stick to the mode of keeping development overseas, experiencing overseas, in close context with development in China and experiences on China. And I mentioned before that development goes hand in hand. And we speak very clearly here that China's development is extremely strongly influenced by the global development, as is the global development extremely strongly influenced by China's development. And we see this, it's a hand-in-hand movement. We see this period from about 2003, 2004, going up to about 2008. So we see a 4-year period of really going hand in hand. On the one side, foreign countries, and especially Europe, understanding better and more about China, while at the same time China making its first moves into overseas markets. So it's a hand-in-hand development, and it's a dependency on each other. Now, we get to the phase of the financial crisis, and suddenly we see, whoosh, it's going down. We see an enormous slump in foreign investment in China, of course, being influenced by the financial global crisis, especially the financial crisis in Europe. However, we see that even though Chinese overseas investment also had a very brief slowdown, but it was not that serious. The reason why it was not that serious, because at that time, the kind of foreign investment made in Europe was luckily not that much influenced by the financial crisis globally. So this would of course require a deeper analysis of what type and what kind of Chinese enterprises by that period of time had made their approach on the foreign market. Now, with the financial crisis over, foreign countries, and especially Europe, found enough liquidity again to get back into the market. The Chinese market has grown, just continued to grow. This here was just due to the huge lack of liquidity caused by the financial crisis in Europe, that people had to lean back, that enterprises had to lean back, and that investment for a very short period of time just went down the drain. However, we see that starting again after the financial crisis, European investment in China is ever improving, with a lot of investment in consumer products, especially the automobile industry. So Chinese market showing very good signs of health. It also shows that European countries have an extremely strong interest and extremely strong trust on the Chinese market. So Chinese investment environment is good. It's considered to be quite healthy from overseas eyes. It's also considered that China did a lot with regards to improving investment environment, with regards to improving laws that protect your intellectual property, with regards to setting up a better environment for foreign investors. While at the same time, we also see that Chinese investment overseas has been continuing and will continue. So we also see that Chinese companies, they have learned a lot from the development of the last 20 years. They have gained more experience in foreign markets. They have joined up with good partners, and they do have a better understanding, even though it's not that complete yet, about foreign markets. Now, what does it mean? We just take a look at those figures again, because they are important to understand in order then to figure out what would be the specific areas that would be interesting for both sides of investment. What we see here is the investment trends of Chinese enterprises in Europe over a certain period of time. From 2004 to 2011, we have here in red the European Union aggregated direct investment, and green would show the direct investment. So there is a difference, and what I think is quite important, and this is what I want to look at, is the direct investment, because it does make some difference to compare the figures from aggregated investment, because this somehow shows an overall picture but not a very clear picture. But what is very important is, of course, the direct form of investment. Now we have here, as I said, the green line would show the direct investment of the European Union in China, while the blue line here shows the Chinese direct investment in the European Union. So what we have seen before is the whole overseas investment, not just the European Union, but the overseas investment in China and Chinese direct investment in overseas countries. And here now we get a step deeper into Europe, which we later try to get a little bit a better understanding about, and look at the investment of Europe in China and the Chinese investment in Europe. Now here again, we see very clearly, we talk about those years where European Union investment in China here in 2010